About the three Abrahamic faiths. Our goal today is to foster understanding, respect, and unity among these diverse traditions. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our esteemed panelists who will be sharing their insights and wisdom with us. Please join me in welcoming Rabbi Daniel, Imam Ghazi, Father George. Each of these religious leaders has made significant contributions to their respective faith communities, and we are grateful for their presence here today. Guiding us through the conversation, we are honored to have Emery, and I'm going to butcher the last name, Chile. He's the Executive Director of Peace Islands Institute, and he's going to be our moderator for today. Emery has dedicated his career to promoting interfaith dialogue and understanding, and we are truly fortunate to have him with us. Today's event will consist of a panel discussion followed by a Q&A session. We encourage all of you to actively engage and ask questions during the Q&A portion to make the most out of this unique opportunity. Before we begin, I'd like to share some housekeeping announcements. A specially catered meal will be available to everybody right after the discussion, honoring all the dietary restrictions. We'll have kosher, halal, anything that you might that you want for today, you'll have over there. Also, there's going to be restrooms. There's on this floor restrooms. If you don't want to use the restrooms on this floor, you have other restrooms in the rest of the building. So feel free to ask anyone from the staff and we'll help you out. Lastly, we kindly ask you to silence your phones during the event to ensure an enjoyable experience for all. Once again, thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you find this event enriching and thought-provoking. Now, without further delay, I'll hand over the stage to Emery to begin the panel discussion. Enjoy the event.
Good afternoon, everyone. Such a pleasure to be here on campus. My first visit to Brooklyn College. Good to be here. It's also my fourth year in New York, so I'm, I think, honorary New Yorker by now. I spent 10 years in Washington, D.C., and you can probably figure out from my accent that I'm from the South. You worked it out?
Yeah.
I am, of course, when I say South, you go past Mississippi, all the way through the Chile, take a right turn, and I'm from a little exotic tropical island in the Pacific, known as Australia. Well done. Well done, you will succeed in life, those that work that out. I want to start with just a verse from Rumi, Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi, or simply in the West known as Rumi. Who's heard of this mystic poet by the name of Rumi? Okay, it's probably a good third. It's interesting. It is for me, at least, both as an Australian and a new American. And just in terms of my background, I'm Turkish Australian American Muslim. So there's a few hyphens there in terms of describing myself. Rumi is a Muslim mystic poet that lived or passed away some 800 years ago. And it's interesting because his poetry in the United States is read by more Americans than any living or deceased American poet. And I think that's a significant bit of trivia. Maybe important, but I wanted to allude to that in terms of the message and the universality of his message and why Americans cling to him in terms of looking for solutions in terms of our difficulties we face as individuals and as communities. And I quote from Rumi: "Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it." My first engagement in interfaith dialogue was when I was 9. Well, my first engagement as I remember it. I distinctly remember my neighbor asking me if I celebrated Christmas, and I said no, and they were shocked. I assume it was his first time he realized he was chatting to a non-Christian. I can't ever remember if I'd mentioned to him that I was Muslim. He also asked me whether I believed in Jesus. I said no. I haven't gotten to that part in my Islamic education at that age. Jesus, of course, is known as Isa in Arabic for both Muslims and Christians, and is someone we believe in and love. So this is my first somewhat theological and social introduction to interfaith engagement. It was until many years later that I became an activist on campus, setting up my university's first Muslim Students Association, that I began formally engaging with other students of different faiths. I was studying to be a computer engineer then at the University of Technology in Sydney, Australia. So my interfaith and cross-cultural journey to discovering along the way both allowed me to discover both myself and others. And I think that's probably one of the most important messages. As we engage with others, we're not only learning about other people or even the concept of the other, whatever that may mean to you as individuals or to all of us as New Yorkers, but you begin to learn about yourself, about what it means to be a dignified human being. And that's very significant. There's not much to be said about interfaith engagement. Of course, we have limited time. I'll quote from some important thinkers for us to reflect upon in a few moments. But one thing I want to point out is that in a very secular, materialistic, and ever-changing world, our collective faiths can come together to struggle against the sometimes difficult issue of anti-religious sentiment. Two heads are better than one, as the saying goes, means that for all of our collective heads, and possibly more important, our collective hearts, we can play a constructive role. And history has shown us that if we remain silent while others are facing persecution, then God forbid, there may be no one left to help us when they, whoever they may be, come for us. The late Rabbi Jonathan Sacks was a prominent advocate of interfaith engagement and believed that it was essential for building a peaceful and tolerant society. And I quote, "The only way to overcome mistrust is to build friendships, and the only way to build friendships is to get to know people. Interfaith dialogue is not a luxury, it is a necessity if we are to overcome the tensions and conflicts of the 21st century. In a world that is becoming ever more complex and interdependent, it is simply not an option to remain ignorant of the beliefs, customs and practices of those who live alongside us. Our challenge today is to create a global society that is both pluralistic and peaceful, in which people of all faiths and cultures can flourish. This will require not just tolerance, but genuine respect and understanding. Religion is not the problem, but the solution. The solution lies in rediscovering the shared values that underpin all of our great faiths: compassion, justice, and the sanctity of human life." End of numerous quotes. Pope John Paul II spoke extensively about interfaith engagement and its importance in promoting peace and understanding between people of different faiths. Quoting the Pope, "The Church sees in other religions the search for truth, and these religions, though they may contain elements not found in Christianity, often reflect a ray of that truth which enlightens all men and women. Interreligious dialogue is the necessary condition for peace in the world, and so it is a duty for Christians as well as other religious communities." Continuing on with Pope Francis, "Our respect for each other as well as for the convictions we hold must lead us to mutual respect and freedom, in such a way that every authentic expression of religious identity is respected, without any form of pressure or imposition. In today's world, which is increasingly multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-religious, we are challenged to find new ways of living our faiths, of being disciples of the Lord." The Quran reminds us that there is intentionality in our diversity. And this is no accident, and we are meant to be different. This is significant. We are meant to be different. And I quote, this is a verse from the Quran, "O people, we have created you from a male and a female and made you into nations and tribes that you may know one another. Truly the most honored of you in the sight of the Almighty is the one who is most righteous among you. Is the one that is most righteous among you. An important Muslim thinker and writer states, and his name is Fethullah Gulen, he states, we need to learn about each other's religions and way of life and promote dialogue and understanding. This is the only way we can overcome the barriers of ignorance and prejudice that divide us. We must understand that we are all human beings and that we all have a shared responsibility to work for the common good. Our common values as human beings are more important than our differences, and we must work together to promote these values in our communities and in the world. You would have heard of the Golden Rule, such an important principle. It is often expressed as, do unto others as you would them do unto you, and is found in all of our religious traditions. And this is significant. It is found in all of our religious traditions. I'm going to end this introduction with a small anecdote. I made a friend some 20 years ago as part of a project I was leading in Melbourne, Australia, that brought together 15 Jewish and 15 Muslim families together, and the project was called Building Bridges. And at our first meeting of some 100 or so people, Walter, that was his name, Walter Rappaport, stood up to ask a question. He simply asked, why dialogue? Why dialogue? And something we all really need to ponder, and this was my response. Why not? Why not? I offered him the long answer and a short answer. He said, give me the short answer. And that was my response. Why not? There are so many things. And this brings us back to the initial quote. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you've built against it. Thank you. Let me formally now introduce our guest clergy. Then I'll put to them some questions for a discussion, and thereafter I'll be handling some questions from the audience, I believe, as part of the Q&A. We have Rabbi Daniel Albert. He's an Orthodox Union's Jewish Learning Initiative on campus rabbi for Brooklyn College. He has an undergraduate degree in design from Queen's College and a master's in digital marketing and media from Yeshiva University. He received his Semika rabbinical ordination from the Rabbi Isaac L. Cannon Theological Seminary. Father Abey George is an Orthodox Christian priest currently serving at St. Thomas Malankara Orthodox Church, Levittown, New York. He received a BS in Physics from the College of Staten Island, a Master of Divinity from St. Tikhon's Orthodox Theological Seminary, and MA in Christian Spirituality from Fordham University. Currently completing a doctorate in ministry at St. Vladimir's Orthodox Theological Seminary. He also serves as a principal secretary to the Diocesan Metropolitan of the Northeast American Diocese of the Malankara Orthodox Syrian Church. His Grace Zachariah Mar Mikolovos. He also works as the hospital chaplain for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, New York Harbor Healthcare System in Brooklyn, New York. And lastly, Imam Ghazi Aga is the director of the Northeast Islamic Community Center, New Jersey, New York area, and chaplain at Sacred Heart University in Fairfield, Connecticut. He was the Imam of the Albanian American community in Waterbury, Connecticut for more than 5 years, known as Imam Ghazi. He also served as a correctional chaplain for 2 years. He is part of the Three Amigos, a priest, an imam, and a rabbi, and Interfaith initiative. So please welcome our distinguished guests. I'm going to start off this discussion with some questions. That believe in God, and I'll leave it to any of you to start. A set of 2 or 3 questions in one. What is God? How do you explain God in your faith tradition? And do we all pray to the same God?
Start from the youngest. Alright, I guess that makes me first. I'm just going to set a timer because I'm going to speak forever. Can you just say the question again? Who is God?
What is God?
Okay. God is a big concept. So we're just going to break it down into a very short amount of time. We believe that in Orthodox Judaism that God is everything. He is everything that was, everything that is, and everything that will be. We believe that God is, we refer to Him in many different ways, some of which is, firstly, our King. So we have reverence for God. We believe that He acts like a king where He sets laws. We refer to Him like a father, where we both revere and respect Him, but also in that father role also understand Him as our creator. So as a father and a creator, we have reverence, we have love, and as a father, we also are treated as children. So anything that you would expect from your own parents. So we also say that that's a relationship that we have with God as well. In terms of how else we view Him, God is above nature. He's not within nature. He is not nature. He is above nature. He has created nature. He has created everything. He sustains everything continuously. He was not just a one-time creator. That's the currently, and we believe also in the end of days that He is also all that will be left at the end. Then, now, and then. Now, then, and in the future. In terms of if we pray to the same God, I really believe that, I don't remember who told me this, but I was told as a young kid, it's just different ways up the same mountain. When we're all climbing up a mountain, the point is to get to the peak. The point is to get to that spiritual epicenter, to understand what we're doing in life, how we're getting our spiritual satisfaction, and how we view the world. And I think that different faith traditions are just different paths along the same mountain, just trying to get to the same point of how do we understand this? How do we understand life? That's my time. My time for reading.
First of all, before I begin, I want to offer my thanks to the student government for organizing this event. So, from a Christian Orthodox tradition, we have plenty of dogmatic terminologies that we use, consubstantial of one essence. But instead of using that, I would say when you take all the theological terminologies and get to the core, the essence of it, how do we describe God as? One word, relationship. It boils down to that. God is so deeply, madly in love with humanity that He, who is uncreated, has no relation to creation, takes up creation to be part of creation so that He can share everything of who He is with humanity. That sums up our description of who God is. And to quote the great saints of the church, one of the saints, St. Athanasius of Alexandria, he says, God became man so that man can become like God. God shares everything of who He is to humanity out of His love. So relationship, love, is the essence of, understanding these two words, relationship and love, is the essence of Orthodox Christianity.
Well, assalamu alaikum, peace to everyone. I would like to thank the organizers and also you who are present here. We were told, and we had a very nice coffee conversation, that this is one of the first events, interfaith discussions. I think this is an historical moment for us, but also for you guys, so thank you very much. Actually, we will live together in every core of society, and it wouldn't be normal if we wouldn't be together in an academic place to discuss and to talk. Since we have just 2 minutes, I would like to describe, to answer this question through some verses from Quran. That will be the shortest way of describing God. Otherwise, if I go to philosophy, etc., it will be very hard. Starting from the second question, yes, we believe at the same God, even though we believe differently. We just don't believe in the same God. We believe to the same prophets. As Muslims, we believe to the books that were sent before, and we see that continuation of the chain of prophethood and books, and till the final message and the final book of Islam and Quran. So God says in Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, والله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم والله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. So he is Allah, and we believe that this word is the word which Christians in Egypt used for God too. So Allah is Allah the creator. There is no God worthy of worship except Him, nor of the seen and unseen. He is the most compassionate and most merciful. He is Allah. There is no God except Him, the King, the most holy, the all-perfect, the source of serenity, the watcher of all, the Almighty, the supreme in might, the majestic, glorified is Allah, far above what they associate with Him in worship. He is Allah, the creator, the inventor, the shaper. He alone has the most beautiful names. Whatever is in the heavens and the earth constantly glorifies Him, and He is the Almighty, All-Wise. So we believe, as you see, a lot of commonalities. We believe that this God who is the creator of everything, whenever we try to describe Him as form, we believe that He is out of that. Time is just a creature, and thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. This one's a real interesting question. According to your faith tradition, religion, what is one's purpose in life? Why are we here? Or why are we not here?
So, according to Orthodox Christian belief, why are we here? What is the purpose of our life? Fundamentally, it is to unite ourselves with the divine. It is to unite ourselves, our entire life with God, because God desires to share His life with us. And there's a fancy word that we use in Orthodoxy called theosis, to become like God, to acquire the very nature of God Himself. And again, going back to what I said before, to understand unity with God, it goes back to a relationship. It begins with realizing that, I have to make certain efforts within my own self. I have to invest my time, my energy, my soul, my entire being to get to know this person. Just like when you're dating the other person, you cannot just, have a relationship with the person when you're just texting the person. No, you gotta spend time with the person. You have to have a meal together. And we have that on Sundays. We have a meal with God on Sundays, what we call the Divine Liturgy, where we experience Him at a physical, intimate, emotional level. So the whole purpose comes down to a relationship where you're sharing your life with God and uniting yourself with God, in which our souls are seeking. There's a great saint in the church, Blessed Augustine, who says, "My soul is running all over the place trying to seek satisfaction, but my soul will not rest until it rests in you." And that is what we all, as Orthodox Christians, believe, that our souls will not rest until it rests in God. So that's our belief, our purpose in our life as Orthodox Christians.
So in Orthodox Judaism, very similarly, we believe that one of the most important things is a relationship with God. So we get there a little bit differently, right? Different ways, different paths up the mountain. So we believe that the best way to get a relationship with God is to read the books that He wrote, to sit and learn and to toil in them, to say, well, if we can't really see God, we can't really feel God, we can't really talk to God, so what's the best way to have a relationship with something that you can't see, hear, feel, or really describe in any way? So we believe that the best way to do so is to read and to learn, to toil, so much so to understand His laws, His precepts, His commandments that He left for us, so that way we can truly have a relationship with Him. So relationship is number one. Secondly is to bring morality into the world, to make sure that bring godliness, morality, and the light of God into the world. That's not to say, let me be very specific, not to say, everyone has to be Jewish. Again, different paths up the same mountain. We believe in Judaism that at the end of days, not everyone has to be Jewish. It's just that everyone recognizes God. that he exists and that we understand who he is. So I think that that's number two. Number three, purpose in life is again to not only to bring morality into the world and not only to have a relationship with God, but to also bring us closer to the perfect end of days example, which is not an apocalypse. We don't view end of days as apocalyptic, but rather, as the Talmud says, that everyone is going to sit in a circle where everyone is equidistant with God as the epicenter, and everyone is just sitting and enjoying the light of God. Now, I know that that's very esoteric and it doesn't mean anything to any of us, including myself, and it sounds very strange. But that's what we believe at the end of the day, is that whatever it means, that you're enjoying the best steak sandwich of your life, and you're like, wow, this is amazing. Like, that's what it's going to be like in the end of the day, but like 1,000 times better because it's the light of God instead of the steak sandwich. So the three purposes in life, we would say, is again, bringing yourself to the perfect end of days where you're just sitting in the glory of God. Number two is where you are having a relationship with God. And number three, bringing morality and godliness into the world.
Well, this is going to sound very Islamic, but this is what Islam does. We see what previous brothers say and talk. If there is anything left, we try to complete. So it's a very tricky question, because in a century where selfishness and individualism is kind of the core belief of a lot of people, Islam, and then also I would say almost the same answer, puts serving to God and humanity at the center of our life. So the purpose of a Muslim would be to worship God and to seek His pleasure and to attain happiness in this life and in hereafter. So paradise, the life after death, becomes very important in the Islamic belief. What's tricky and what's nice is the result of this. While you seek the pleasure of God, what you have to do that, you have to worship Him, to respect His guidelines, to believe. There's the articles of belief, to believe in God and angels and books and prophets and hereafter and the divine destiny, and also to worship Him through 5 daily prayers, and let's say through fasting and through almsgiving. But also the other part of faith, which is very central and important in Islam, is our relationship with each other. So you will find God when you visit the sick. You will find God there when you visit the needy. You will find God there when you help the orphan. So the purpose of life, according to the Islamic perspective, is to attain God's pleasure, but that's impossible without being careful in your relationship with each other. If you do that, we believe that you'll have that spiritual happiness, and you'll be happy in both worlds, and this life and in hereafter. As Rabbi mentioned, a very important part of your purpose in life is having an active social justice life, and trying to make the place where you live as a better place, and to form that family which will transform this life, this world, into a paradise, and that will definitely send you with worship and belief to paradise in hereafter too.
Thank you, Imam. Thank you, everyone. What is a commonly held misconception about your tradition, and what would you like us to know? Maybe 1 or 2 misconceptions you'd like to share.
Yeah, so how much time do we have? Says the Imam, yes. So I don't know if you have any exam today, but this is over. The day will be concluded with misconceptions about Islam. Unfortunately, people are not well educated regarding any religion at all. And I'm happy to speak to students and in a place where academics tend to read more and research. And I think in Islam, research and source is at the central of theology. I'll just name misconceptions, because there are a lot. Misconception is that people treat Islam as a new religion, as a bizarre community, as something which they hear for the first time. Islam is 1400 years old. Islam's history. It's not related to just some crazy people from anywhere. One of the hijackings towards Islam is hijacking the concept of jihad, which is a sacred concept in Islam. Is struggling, and the biggest struggle is the struggle that you have with your ego, the struggle that you have to help your family, to feed your family, to help the neighbor. Jihad is improving yourself as a student, as a father, as a sister, as a brother. Jihad is making yourself as a better citizen, as a better believer. And this will be a sacred concept, and then we see that in media in a very different way. Another misconception is the way how we treat women. Another misconception is the way how we treat those who are from different religions. If you are a Muslim, and that's one of the best things that I like in Islam, is the way you embrace the previous communities. My daughter's name is Sarah. I could have named her Hagar, but her name is Sarah. So we believe that the prophets that came before us, we love them, we respect them, but the same way we believe our own prophet, our own tradition. The head scarf is another misconception, which maybe sisters would explain that better. So a lot of misconceptions. We don't have time to clarify those all, but I think that by the help of friends like Rabbi Albert and Abey and other students who are here, it's very nice to clarify people by explaining our friends. I noticed this: if you have a Muslim friend, you have less misconceptions. If you have a Jewish friend, you have a lot of less misconceptions about Judaism. The same is for our brothers and sisters in Christianity. Thank you.
Before you continue, I have these QR codes, and I'm sure you know what you're going to do with these. You scan them on your phone, and it takes you to a very special place. That special place, you can ask questions. We're taking written questions, so I will hold this up for a few moments, and there's one over there to my left, your right, and one on the TV screen there to my right as well. Yes, I'm obstructing it. I'm obstructing justice as usual. So please, I will hold this up, but there are on the left questions. Okay? It's not all about looking good in front of you. We do want to answer some questions. Okay. Thank you. Please.
I guess I'll share misconceptions about Orthodox Christianity. I would say there's two misconceptions, I would say. The first one I would say is that, if you are a Christian, you go to church every Sunday, and then you obey the commandments of God, and you're good. That's oftentimes how it's understood. However, it's beyond that. In prayer, all the fasting and the abstinence that we do, it should lead us towards fundamentally loving others. How do you know whether you're living out the Christian life, whether you're acquiring or participating in the grace of God at a most intimate level, and your strength of your relationship with God? How is it measured? It's measured in your relationship with one another, specifically in your relationship with your enemies. So if we fail to love our enemies, there's a word that's used oftentimes, within the Greek fathers, known as it's called philoxenia, love for strangers. If we fail to acquire philoxenia, if we fail to acquire love for strangers, enemies, people who are different, people who cause harm to us on a daily basis, if we fail to cultivate that, it's a reflection of our relationship with God. So it's not just external means of trying to make God happy, according to Orthodoxy, but it's fundamentally loving God so that it can flow through your relationship with people who cause harm to others in our life, and people who are different from us. The second thing I would say, a misconception about Orthodox Christianity is that, to answer that question, I would say, I love the flyer, whoever created that, kudos to you. I love the fact that it said, a discussion about Abrahamic traditions instead of religions. I love the fact that it said traditions, because I truly feel that oftentimes Christianity or any of our faiths is just categorized and pigeonholed into a religion. And the very moment when a religion is when a faith is pigeonholed to a religion, I feel it's judged in various ways, in misunderstanding ways. And I would say Orthodox Christianity, one of the misconceptions is that it is a religion among other religions, while I would say it is a therapeutic science that heals the souls of man so that it can experience God and man in a proper way. There is a priest named Father John Romanides who writes about orthodoxy in the sense where if Christianity was restarted today, it would not fall under religion. It would fall under mental health sciences because it cured man of his illness. What are the illnesses? I think Imam mentioned about our ego, our pride, our love towards ourself, selfishness, greed, lust, and all these things that actually prevents us from reaching our true purpose in our life. Christianity cured that through their relationship with God and their relationship with other people as well. So it's a therapeutic science, fundamentally. It's a lifestyle. It's a way of being, and not just a simple adherence to certain regulations that's offered by the church.
Just going to start my timer. So I think when you're talking about Orthodox Judaism, the two biggest misconceptions that I would say, and that I want to talk about, because I only have a few minutes, is the first is that it's all or nothing. We have a ton of laws that kind of fall under all categories of life and kind of encompass everything that we do. And people kind of think it's like, well, you know, I didn't keep this thing, I don't keep kosher anymore, I don't keep the Sabbath anymore, so that's it. I can't be an Orthodox Jew anymore, and, you know, throw it all away. It's just not a thing. And we believe that all of life is a journey. So when you're journeying, and when you're trying to get to, trying to perfect yourself, trying to get better, so we don't expect that you do everything 100% and that you're 100% of the time. It's just not a realistic expectation. So the fact is that we try our hardest, and it doesn't make you not an Orthodox Jew to say, you know, sometimes I struggle with this. But the fact is that we try our hardest and we try and do the things that we're supposed to do. The second misconception, I would say, along very similar lines, is that we have so many don'ts in the Jewish religion. So many don'ts. They don't do this and don't do that, and stay away from this and stay away from that. I think that too often that we miscategorize the don'ts, and instead we really need to look at it, instead of don'ts, as a beautiful way of looking at life, of how to sanctify the way that we look at tradition, the way that we look at life, the way that we look at other people, the way that we look at everything. The don'ts are not necessarily don'ts as, no, you can't do this, you know, don't touch that, it's hot, don't do that. Rather, it's God telling us basically a way of how we can better ourselves through the things that happen in our lives, the things that we encounter on a daily basis. We see these things on a daily basis. Okay, maybe stay away from that so that way, you know, your spiritual health can improve, right? If you go to a doctor and they tell you, you know, to go on a diet, it's not about the don'ts, don't eat that, don't eat that, don't eat that. You won't have a diet if you say, well, I can't eat this and I can't eat that and I can't eat that. You'll stick with your diet for 2 days, you know? Instead, if you look at, I'm basing this to use for my spiritual improvement, so that way I can get to a higher level, so that way I can get to a point where I see God in everything, and so that way, you know, God is telling me this is how, you know, you get to the end goal, this is how you get to the purpose of life. So if that's what God is telling me, so instead of don'ts, it's just a beautiful way to see how to improve your life.
Thank you, Rabbi. Why do religions require more guidelines for humanity to follow? A lot of people find these moral injunctions difficult. What is the wisdom behind that?
I'd like to answer that by asking how many of you have gone to your doctor recently and had a checkup? Every time I go to my doctor, I get bad news. It's like, Father, you got to work on your diet. You got to work on, you know, your exercise. How many minutes do you work out every day? Do you run? I ask all these questions. I leave with this sense of, oh my God, I don't think I could make it. I don't think I could do it. But see, it's difficult because I don't make the attempt, right? It's difficult because I don't understand, at the end of the day, what am I really why am I doing this? The question of why. See, in Orthodox Christianity, there are a lot of regulations that we have. We have, within a year, I would say about 1/3 of the time is dedicated towards fasting. Towards every Wednesday and Friday, we observe Lent. Our prayers are long. And we have a lot of moral things that we do, we don't do, and we have all these codes. But at the end of the day, when you look at why it's being offered, it's essentially therapy. It's essentially treatment. It's essentially healing. I would always share this when it comes to Lenten seasons and fasting seasons. We have 40-day fast before in a Holy Week. And before that, a lot of very young people ask, Father, why does it matter if I eat meat or fish for the next 40 days? And I say, it's very simple. If you have difficulty not eating Chipotle for 40 days, how are you going to have a good relationship with God? How are you going to say, it's learning how to say no. It's learning how to say no. And moral codes essentially learning how to say no. Think about this. A lot of troubles that we have in our life isn't because of the fact that we fail to say no. It's because we say yes very quickly. So these moral codes have to be seen as ways that we're training to learn to say no. And once we learn to say no, we can begin to say yes to some important things in our life, such as God, such as prayer in our life. So that's how we see moral codes and obligations. Yes, it's tough, it's difficult, but don't get so caught up in the difficult part. Get caught up in the purpose. Why am I doing this? Because that will motivate you to engage in what we call asceticism, which is training, spiritual training, so that we can reach our true potential in God.
So partially I answered this question, I guess, with the last one, but I'm going to use a little bit of an obscure metaphor that I heard that it really changed my life, so if you'll stick with me for an obscure metaphor. How many of you guys have done a puzzle at all ever in your life? Okay, a couple of people. So the first thing that you're going to do when you do a puzzle is you dump out the pieces, and then you put up the box. This is at least what I do. I hope you guys do it also. You put up the box so that way you see what picture you're making. My sister once got me a puzzle. Basically, it was a picture of me in my graduation gown when I graduated my master's. It was a black gown, because the color of the school was black, and I don't remember what other color. And the folds happened to be gray and like white because of the way that the light reflected. But when I looked at the individual pieces, I said, I had no idea how this fits into the puzzle. I think they forgot to color these pieces, or they gave me from a different picture, or from someone else's puzzle. I had no idea what was happening. Now, if I didn't have the picture right in front of me of the box, I would have no idea what's happening. So everyone's thinking like, okay, how does this answer the question? I see your faces. Okay, stick with me for a second. The way that a puzzle works, right? Again, you're putting the box in front of you so that way you can see the puzzle. And I'm guessing, just moving away for a second, now I'll come back to the puzzle. When you guys all came to Brooklyn College, you didn't really know what was happening here in Brooklyn College. You didn't know where to go, you didn't exactly know how USG worked, you didn't know how your classes worked, you didn't know how QD First worked, or Blackboard, or any of the other systems, and it took really a lot of getting used to, and you needed to ask people who were there before you to kind of teach you the way, because we trust them because they've been in the system for so long. Okay, so now we're going to bring it all together. When you look at God, we're like tiny in the eyes of God, because God has existed forever, and we're here 80 years of our lives, 120 years hopefully. That's really it. That's all we get. So we have to basically look for the wisdom of the people, the people who were here before us. But the people before us were also only here for 120, hopefully. So that it's only small pieces again, according to God. So when you're looking at it, you say, okay, well, what do I need? I need really the instruction book. I need to know what it is that I'm making. So let's go back to the puzzle. When you're making a puzzle, and God is telling you, okay, you have a puzzle to make. Right? He's giving you all the pieces for the puzzle, and you open that box, right? The puzzle is all of our lives and everything that we're given. And we're looking at that puzzle, we're like, oh my God, this is a 2,000-piece puzzle. I have no idea how any of these colors match. I have no idea what's going into anything. There's a piece with triangles on it. How does this fit into a puzzle? But when you finish the puzzle, you're like, oh, now I see. But it's not always true that we have the box to be able to tell, like, oh, this makes sense. I see how this all fits into the puzzle. But God, who's the puzzle maker, right? The puzzle maker was sitting right behind you, and he told you, hey, by the way, there's triangles in it, and just letting you know it goes right in the center. You would be like, oh, okay, that was easy, put it right there. Unfortunately, we don't have that foresight or the afterthought to say, hey, look at that puzzle that I created. Now I understand how everything was created there. And we don't have the pre-thought of God coming to us and saying, hey, puzzle, I'm the puzzle maker, here's how to make the puzzle. So we basically have to rely on God and His Word to say, this is how you make the puzzle. So when you're looking at morals and you're looking at everything that's there, you say, maybe I don't agree with this. It's true. Maybe I don't really understand how this works. But when you have a puzzle maker who's created every single puzzle in the world and he knows how it all fits together at the end of the day, you're going to trust him and say, listen, I'm only here for a very short amount of time. I see only a little tiny piece of this puzzle. Maybe I listen to the puzzle maker on this one. Maybe I don't actually know what I'm talking about. So the moral guidelines are really, even though we might not agree, maybe we don't understand, maybe they're really hard to follow. But in the end of the day, when the puzzle maker tells you to do it, you see at the end of the day, you see how it all fit in. And then it all comes together into a full puzzle to be able to see how it all works together.
Well, the only thing I like in the puzzle is mocking those who does it. I don't really like puzzles. So there are some misconceptions about moral guidelines and religious traditions, as my friend Abey explained, is like seeing moral guidelines as just don'ts. So we believe that there is a freedom and knowing what you have to do. So since you are students and I am a student, everyone is kind of a student in a meaning or no. So having an exam and not knowing at all what you have to do is one of the biggest troubles that a student can have. I remember myself finishing 2 books in 1 hour, trying to find what you have to do, what are your next questions. So, and having moral guidelines is like having a framework of the responsibilities that you have, not just towards others, but in Islam also towards ourselves. In Quran, there is a concept of misusing yourself, making israf with yourself. We should be careful how we use ourselves too. And these videos on TikTok on motivational speeches, you have to do this and you can do it, you can have it, and then you go out in life and you see that actually you have very limited capabilities to do it. So these moral guidelines kind of explain to you that, one, let's not forget what we're talking about. God is self-sufficient, He doesn't need us. So first, these guidelines are not for God, these are for us to make our life better, to make our relationship better. But also to remember that moral guidelines are not just for the way how we treat each other, but the other creatures. And this way, as a believer, having these guidelines and also knowing that God loves us, He's very merciful, but also He sees us as sinners, He sees us as weak, but also He's kind of teaching us by giving moral guidelines which will help us in every situation of life. There is a pleasure in accomplishing some things in life. There is a temporary pleasure in doing easy things, but there is lasting pleasure in making yourself better, and improving in your character, and improving in relationship with each other. And I think with these moral guidelines will help you not just having a better life in this world, but we believe, as we were talking, this will be very very strategic and very important in gaining in attaining the paradise and God's pleasure in hereafter.
Okay, I'm going to the questions, and of course we have a time. We've only got a few minutes, so I will do my best to pick a few of them. How does your religion encourage one-on-one connections with God versus an organized group's relationship to God? And you can all answer, or I can ask more questions and you could pick. How would you like to do it?
I don't want to lose my job. So, one of the biggest blessings is that Allah, the one who we're explaining as the creator of everything, the all-seer, the all-hearing, is also always accessible from an Islamic perspective to the one who prays to Him and speaks to Him and prays and makes prostration, which is the essence of worship in Islam, is prostration. Prostration is the essence of salah, the 5 daily prayers. The salah is imaduddin, the foundation of Islamic religion. And it's interesting having prostration as the essence of all worship. And prostration is an individual relationship. It's an individual communication with God. But also, COVID showed us that we need each other. We need community. In Islam, we have both perspectives. We have the value of praying to Allah. We have, you live in Brooklyn, and here is a concept called nightlife. We have nightlife in Islam, and that is praying individually to Allah when no one sees you, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 1:30 a.m. And that is actually a very good reminder of the relationship we should have with God. But also, we have the weekly, at least once per week, you have to come together. When you come together, you forget your problems. When you come together, you share the joy and you share the sorrow. So I think having that in balance would be a perfect practiced religion.
But we can also dance at night as well, right? Let's not scare everyone away.
Before prayer.
I would say in Orthodox Christianity, we very similar in the sense where we appreciate both and we try to balance both. And it's important to have that individual prayer. In Scripture, it talks about how you should go into the innermost chamber of your heart. It talks about that, how you should spend time having that personal connection with God. But at the same time, the church teaches that a Christian alone is not a Christian at all. To be a Christian means that we are all together communal beings, and we're not simply individual beings. That when we worship together, it's a reminder that we're all brothers and sisters of one God. And when we worship together, we come together as a family. That's the main thing that we do on Sundays. When we come together, I address the church as family. We come together as a family to be able to share a meal together with God. So having that connection is so important, because another thing we have to keep in mind is that God speaks to us through the Scriptures and through the traditions of the church. At the same time, God speaks to us through our neighbor as well. We sometimes forget that. Sometimes help is right under our nose and probably shows up in the most unexpected way. And perhaps it is through the community that we are called to be part of that God works through us. I mean, there are so many examples of that in different communities where you begin to get to know resources and help that you were looking for. It was shared to you through the community that you were part of. So don't close yourself in such a way that you feel it's only me and God. But no, balance both, where you should realize that God, when you pray to God, when you have that connection with God, God works through the community to help us. And we definitely saw that during COVID time as well. So that's how we ought to see balancing both the communal and also the individual relationships.
So in Orthodox Judaism, there's an idea of the 10 Commandments, where you have 2 tablets. The first 5 are relationship between man and God, and the second side is relationship between man and his friend. And we say, basically, you never call it, hey, on one tablet, you never say the one tablet. It's always the 2 tablets, and it's always the 10 Commandments. You never separate them out. So when you're talking about the 10 Commandments, it's very, very important in Orthodox Judaism that they're side by side. There's not that one is more important, and it's not that one is, to be able to respect man and his fellow, you have to first understand the relationship between man and God, your individual relationship, knowing that everyone is made in the image of God, both Jews and non-Jews, everyone is made in the image of God, and therefore it is very, very important to understand that they are side by side. If you meet anyone who says that they believe in the relationship between man and God and then goes and curses out his friends and kicks his friends while he's down or whatever he's doing, I'm sorry, but you're not practicing Orthodox Judaism. You're just practicing 5 of the commandments, and you're just picking and choosing, and that's just not what we do. We believe that they're side by side, and you must do both. That's very, very important. You have to do both, and they're side by side for that reason, to show you that they are equally important. They're not one long list, right? Could have just written one long list. They're side by side to show you just as equally important these are also important, just like Father said. But just like Imam said, we also have this idea that in Orthodox Judaism that you can go and have internal thought and internal prayer. There are great rabbis who used to go out to the forest and meditate, where they used to speak to God one-on-one. And so, even within our prayers, while we believe in communal prayer, there are certain parts that are just silent devotions to ourselves. So, like Father also said, there's no such thing as Orthodox Judaism in isolation. You have to be around community because we believe so much in community. But there are individual aspects, like I had said before, learning Torah, right? Learning the Bible and learning the books that God gave us and things that He spoke to us about. So those are ways to gain relationships with God one-on-one. But all the other things, so those are precepts that we have to do and things that we have to follow that are very communal, because the community and your fellow are so important in Orthodox Judaism.
Okay, lovely. Now, because we're running out of time, I'm going to put 5 questions, and I'll tell you how many questions there are, and there's quite a few, and I thank every one of you. There's more than close to 45 questions.
Wow.
Okay?
We should do this again.
We should do this again at my place tonight after worship, 3 a.m. I should tell you, in DC we used to do sahurs, like VIP sahurs of everyone knows of Ramadan, the iftar, breaking of the fast, but we have another meal. And after you've been to a few Ramadans, and like in one year in DC, I was there 10 years, we organized 54 iftars in 30 nights. You do the math, it's quite difficult. So once people have been to a few of these, it's not as exotic, right? I've been to Ramadan, I'm talking about non-Muslims, right? Ramadan, fasting, I broke bread with my Muslim neighbors. So we introduced the pre-fast meal. And of course that's a test of friendship, right? Inviting average Americans, inverted commas, and in DC they're diplomats, think tank people, academia. And we did this for 7 years, started with 80 people, and by the time we finished, we got to 120 people, arriving like at 2 and 3 a.m. Not for worship or dancing, but for preparing for the fast. Of course, I digressed, but that's okay. Now, there are 5 questions I've chosen. I'm going to let you pick one of them to answer. I'll read them quickly and give you a minute to respond before we break away to lunch. And of course, some of the questions have been softball, so there's a few difficult ones. You may pick them, you may not, but at least the students can't complain, say you only gave the easy questions. Okay. Who is going to hell? No, that's not one of them. What do you dislike? This is close. What do you dislike most and or most critical of about the other 2 religions of the 2 religious leaders you are sitting next to? Question 1.
What do you dislike most?
Dislike most about the other 2 religions, their religions. Okay, that's question 1. So I picked some hard ones. 2. Explain the concept of hell in your religion. Why does it exist? And which football team is going there? No. If you believe in the same God, that was question 2. If you believe in the same God, why can't you all be committed to the one religion? Question 3. Can each panelist provide one proof for their religion? That's question 4. How does the 3 religions think of judging others? Question 5. Pick one and respond at will. The last one was, how do the 3 religions think of judging others? And I'll repeat them again.
Yeah, again.
Can each panelist provide one proof for their religion? If you believe in the same God, why can't you all be committed to the one religion? Explain the concept of hell in your religion. Why does it exist? What do you dislike most? This one's my favorite. What do you dislike most? Are most critical of the moderator or about the 2 other religions of the 2 religious leaders? Send them out. Okay, so you got the gist. You can pass all of them. I'll ask another one. I'll ask a softball question if you want. But pick one. Pick one and answer.
Go.
Yes.
Okay, so what does Orthodox Christianity teach about judging? I'll answer that with a story. We have a lot of stories about monasteries in our church. And in a monastery, the head leader of the monastery asked one of the monks to go and search all the rooms of the other monks and see how their rooms look. Okay, so if it's clean or unclean or whatever it may be. So the monk went to the first monk's room and opened up, and it's spotless. Everything is clean and organized. The Bible is placed in a proper way. The cross is placed in a proper way. Everything is nice. And he looks around and says, "Wow, this is wonderful. You know, you pray and you fast and you do all this and you do work at the monastery and you still find time to make your room clean. Good for you." And he goes to the second room and he finds that the monk is there. You know, it's all over the place. The clothes all over the place, books all over the place. Everything is all over the place. And the monk says, "Wow, good for you. Your room is you don't have time to clean up your room. You're spending so much time helping others and praying with God. You know, you're such a holy person." That's how we understand judgment. In other words, accepting others as they are is fundamentally imitating the life of God. So accepting how they are, instead of coming with your own constructs and judging them and putting other people down, is a sin. It's a sin that we should confess according to Christianity. So judging others is a quote by what our Lord said in I believe it's in St. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 7. He says this: "The measure that you use on others will be used on you." The measure that you use to judge others, that same judgment measure will be used on you. So you better be careful, or I should be careful, I should say, in how you judge others, because that same measure will be based on you. Basically, it's God's way of saying, "I'm going to give the taste of your own medicine."
Rabbi, please, which one did you pick?
I'll go for the concept of hell. You want a different one? Okay, good. Okay, so fairly easy. We don't believe in a concept of hell. But that's it. No. We don't believe really in a concept of hell. We do believe in this place called Gehenna, which is really unclear in a lot of the tradition of what exactly it means. It's very, very unclear, but basically we believe that after death there is a period of time that basically corresponds to 11 human months of punishment, of some rectification that happens for the soul. So that way, basically, everyone can ascend to, well, we don't believe in heaven, but whatever concept of, godly, being with God there is. But to sit with God, to be on the level, to be able to sit with God, you need to, purify your soul a little bit. You need to get rectification for anything that you might have done wrong. So it's 11 months It's not exactly 11 months. The 11 months is like the longest that someone would possibly spend, and based on how long or how many sins they did, whatever. It's very, again, esoteric. I don't even understand it. But again, we don't really believe in hell. Rather, just a purification for sins that you might have done, so that way your soul can to be with the light of God.
Okay, I'll use 2 minutes to wrap up different questions. So what I dislike in rabbis is that even though I have a lot of friends, they still didn't teach me how to become rich. So the second one is we believe in the same God, but why would I believe in the same religion? I think the answer is in the question, because we believe in different ways. We don't believe in the same way in God, and I think that's having differences. It shouldn't be seen as an obstacle, but also an alternative for people who have different characters, different minds, different logics, different ways of thinking. So we believe different. I was asked by a Christian friend, what do you think about Trinity? How do you fit that in your tradition? I told him, if that would fit in my tradition, I would be a Christian. So, and the same is for you. You have different beliefs, and you believe in Christianity. So we believe differently. We respect each other. Coming to the sin, I think that's a very good point. In Islam, we learn this perspective of judging the sin, to dislike the sin and not the sinner. Because everyone is a sinner. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he says that كل ابن آدم خطاء وخير الخطاؤون التائبون. So every son of Adam and every daughter of Adam, so every one of us is a sinner, but the best of the sinners are those who repent. So just because we have different sins doesn't make any of us better than the other. Coming to the hell, there is a very nice saying of a very important figure in Islam. He says, if I would know that everyone will go to hell except one, I would have hope that I will be the one going to paradise. If I would know that everyone will go to paradise except one, I would have the fear of going to hell. So if that is helping us to become better people, the existence of hell, if that is there to remind bad people who use their free will and they have no mercy towards others, it's reminding them that there will be an absolute justice, and that's why we believe that the hell is there and it is a must, but not for imams, hopefully. So,
Not imams that want to become rich.
we want to become rich, but not going to the hell. So thank you very much. God bless you.
Okay, everyone. Thank you. Let's please thank our panelists. And give it up for the moderator. Special round of applause for me. There you go. This has been wonderful. Of course, I'm excited to be back on campus. I want to come back. We have a good 40-odd questions unanswered, so this is like a Netflix mini-series. I hope our student leaders will re-invite us, maybe make this either annual or even seasonal. We've got a nice crowd, good food, good people, nice Australians, always a bonus. Thank you. I leave it to our host to end proceedings. Thank you again.
Alright guys, I won't take too long, but sit tight. So I'm Miriam, the events director for the undergraduate student government. And I want one thing I want to make sure is that all you guys sign in. Right now we have about 60 sign-ins, but we need everybody.